Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Fireside Chat. We are so excited to have Jess Hendrick here today with us to talk about why working on yourself is the best thing you can do for your relationships. But before we get started on the fireside chat, I just want to quickly share a little bit about the Grateful Giraffes because I know that some people are watching this on replay on YouTube or they're live streaming it right now. So the Grateful Giraffes is a vibrant community of over 800 members who value gratitude, wellness, and impact. And we're both spiritual and grounded at the same time. And what we love to do is co-create meaningful experiences while building, a community all across the world, especially in LA, where a lot of us are based. And we're also building a lifestyle brand dedicated to human flourishing. So you can watch our other fireside chats on the YouTube channel, and you can also subscribe there. You can also go to gratefulgiraffes.com to learn a little bit more about us. So today, our fireside chat is with Jess Hendrick. Jess is a relationship coach who specializes in helping individuals and couples heal the unconscious patterns that hold them back from the love and connection they deeply desire. Through her own journey of overcoming childhood trauma and depression, Jess has learned that the key to thriving relationships lies in healing your relationship with yourself. With a compassionate and relatable approach, she approaches her clients in untangling dysfunctional patterns, cultivating self love, and creating relationships rooted in respect, trust, and emotional safety. Jess works with clients one on one and in couples coaching, guiding them to heal at the deepest level and transform their lives from the inside out. We're super excited to have you here, Jess.
Yay, thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, we would love for you to just share a little bit about your journey and how you got into relationship coaching.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's a longer story. But I guess it starts from the time I was just really little and I grew up in a home where I really wasn't understood or seen or heard. And it was very, very challenging for me. And I was made to feel like there was something wrong with me because I was really sensitive. And so all of these things were really traumatic as a little one. And so when I grew up, I sort of brought this blueprint with me that I learned from my family of origin and applied it to every relationship in my life. And so I had a lot of challenges, mostly with romantic relationships, but even sometimes with friendships. And I just had the deepest desire in my heart to shift my experience in the world. And so I have this fascination. I've always had this fascination for how our minds work and why we do the things that we do. And so I just studied and learned as much as I possibly could. And now my life and my relationships are 180 degrees opposite to what they were. Like it's miraculous the amount of love and connection in my life and community. And this is part of it. The giraffe community is definitely part of it. So yeah, so it became a big mission on my heart to support other people who are having challenges in their lives and their relationships, and not just romantic. Like relationship with ourselves is literally the most important one, and it sets the tone for every other relationship. And so healing that relationship and shifting any thought patterns and distortions that are keeping us in patterns that are painful or don't serve us is one of the most loving things we can do. And then there's a ripple effect on that goes out to everyone and everything in our lives. So I just love supporting people in becoming more free and more available for love and connection and joy and peace in their lives.
I love that. And it's so true that we need to heal ourselves first. I think I heard somebody say one time, like, all the bad relationships you have, like, you're the common denominator. And
Yeah,
it's like,
that part.
oh, like it's not because of everybody else, it's because of me. So, how do you start unpacking like yourself and understanding like how to heal yourself, or where do you even begin with this and why is it so important?
That's such a good question. And that you are the common denominator one I definitely have said that one too. And it's really true. And it's humbling but it's also empowering because when we know that we're the common denominator, so there's something within us that's contributing to the dynamics, right? That means we actually can shift things within us and have a different experience rather than wishing and praying and hoping that someone is going to change to, make everything work out. So yeah, and where do you start? So, what I would say is that life is our teacher. And so, if you look at your life and you can kind of look at, what feels like it's flowing and what's working and what isn't. And we all have areas to work on and heal and shift. And so, life is going to keep showing us whatever it is that we need to see. So when I work with clients where I'm not going in and orchestrating things in terms of my agenda, it's more like what is most present for you and what is showing up for you on repeat, because that is the universe, God directing us towards exactly what needs our love, our attention, and our healing, if that makes sense.
It totally does. It's like spotlighting on like you need to look here a little bit more.
Mhm.
What are the common patterns that you see that prevent people from having those healthy relationships? Since you're spotting patterns all the time with your clients, what are the most common ones?
That's a really good question. I mean, the common ones truly are just patterns of protection that we have. So, different experiences that we've gone through in our lives can have us create these protective patterns in our minds and our psyches, right? In our subconscious. And so, we can say consciously, I desire this level of relationship or partnership, or I desire this kind of a friendship. But if there's a protection in our mind, that is keeping us safe, that is going to win out every time. So we just want to really gently look at what's actually showing up in our lives, right? Because we can say one thing, but then there can be other things that are reflected back because life and our relationships are really a mirror for what's going on within ourselves. And so some of the common patterns are just feeling like not really truly worthy of love or feeling like not enough or also feeling like too much. And these things, or that it's not safe, like it's not safe to be vulnerable, it's not safe to let all of you be seen. And so all of those things can come in, and these protectors can come up and keep us from our desires, right? So we want to just be so loving to those parts of ourselves and just understand that everybody's got them. And yeah, the more healing we do, probably the more smoothly our relationships will go. But we're here, human on this planet, learning. So there's going to be challenges. So I don't love the thought that like you have to be perfectly healed before you can have healthy relationships. I don't actually believe that. But I do believe that relationships are an opportunity for us to expand and evolve and grow. And it's a vehicle for our expansion, no matter how big of a mess it might look like, which it can really look like it's really not okay. Something's going really wrong. And I've had so many moments like that in my life where it's just like, this is really not okay. Like all these principles actually don't apply. It's actually all bullshit. It's really not okay. But the hardest things I've gone through have been the vehicles for my greatest expansion. So it's like the more you can be brave enough to look at every part of yourselves, like the dark, the light, and everything in between, the more you can elevate. But it helps to have support. Like there's no way I could have ever done this alone. I have the most loving mentors. I work with coaches myself. I'm always doing trainings. So it's something that I believe we're meant to do together and not something that we're supposed to do on our own and kind of struggle and white knuckle it.
It does take a lot of bravery to look at yourself and look in the mirror and say like, okay, this is the area that I have to heal myself and like, or get support and healing around because, it's hard to say like we're wrong or we're doing it wrong or we have a part of us that's broken, quote unquote, not really broken, but and like what you said about the vulnerability, that's like a big one for me that I realized recently. I don't want to be vulnerable, and so I tend to try to fix other people, and then I always end up in relationships where I'm fixing and they become projects. And I'm like, ah, No wonder, like, I'm not dating like the caliber of person that I want to date. But let's talk a little bit about these unconscious patterns and where they came from. And, a lot of it came from childhood. Like, how do you start to, or let's talk about the impact about childhood wounds on your adult relationships, and how do you start healing these childhood wounds?
Such a good question. I love what you said, Minling, because honestly, I feel like probably every single person can relate to that pattern of like, oh, I can fix this person or I can change. I know, like I'll come in on my with my cape and I'll just change the whole thing and I'll rescue them. And that's actually a pattern that's really common is wanting to rescue or change someone or wanting to be rescued ourselves. And just on a side note, we are programmed in a society that is really not supportive of healthy relationships. So a lot of these, some of these are societal, like societal programming and paradigms that we need to turn on their heads. Um, but as far as where the unconscious patterns come from, so every single human being has some level of trauma, right? So some people will say, "Oh, I don't have any trauma." And that's and I had a wonderful childhood and maybe you did, right? You very well could have, but the thing with trauma is it's not necessarily even what happened to us. It's our reaction in our bodies and minds to what happened to us, right? So trauma is something that happened too much, too fast, and it overwhelms the nervous system. So when that happens in our lives, our brains create imprints to try to keep us safe, right? So let's say we had an experience as a child, and I always use like this tiny example, right? But let's say we go to the store and we want ice cream and we're asking our parent for ice cream and they say no. And for whatever reason, that triggers something in our minds and our bodies as little ones that maybe I don't deserve the thing that I want, or you get overwhelmed. And so the brain then imprints that memory. And so whenever we're in a high state of negative emotion, that's when these imprints happen. And we can form certain beliefs along with them, right? Like, oh, I don't deserve to have this, or I'm not lovable. And it's through the mind and the filter of a child. So as an adult, we can look back and think, oh my gosh, that was nothing, right? Or maybe it was a big thing, like trauma with a big T. So there's trauma with little t, which is like little things like that might not mean much of anything. And then there's trauma with a big T, like car accidents or, disasters or war or whatever. But the biggest thing is the way that we respond to whatever's happening in our environment. And so we carry these imprints with us. And whenever the brain detects something similar in the present moment, the alarm bells start going off in our minds. And it's like, oh, it's the same. It's the same. Be careful. Like go into survival mode. And so we start to see through the filter of that experience and believe that that's what's happening in the moment. And so where people can get tripped up often is it's like, well, this is what's happening, right? Like this thing that's upsetting me is actually what's happening. And that is true. So it's both and, right? The thing that's upsetting you is happening. And if it's hysterical, it's historical. So if you're having a bigger than would be expected reaction, we know that it is touching on something in the past that needs some healing, right? So this is where it's the gift of being in a relationship and going through life is that how else would we know, right? Like it's like having a cut on your arm and you don't realize that you have a cut until you brush up against something and then you're like, oh, that hurt. And then you can tend to the cut and the injury and make sure that it heals, right? And as a result, you can also maybe have more compassion for people who have that same injury. So it's kind of beautiful. And it's not that anything's wrong or bad or broken. It's just that we're human and we have these brains that are constantly looking for a threat in order to keep us safe. Like we have brains that have a negativity bias because our brains have not actually caught up to where we are in our evolution. So we still think we're living in caves with tigers coming out to eat us any moment, right? So yeah, that's kind of how it works.
I love how you explain trauma because, like you said, most people are like, oh, I didn't have like abusive parents, or my parents still loved me, or like my parents are together, there was no divorce or anything like that. And it is like the imprint and like the feelings that you get and the stories that you made. And I also loved what you said about if you're hysterical about something, then it's historical. I've never heard it that way. I was like, oh, that's a good point. It is triggering you. So once you spot these patterns, and this also is related to Robert's question, but how do you start healing yourself from it? Like, what are your favorite, most effective ways that you've used to heal yourself, especially around trauma? If you can go ahead and share.
Yeah, beautiful question. So the first step really is just becoming aware of whatever the pattern is, right? Because if we're not aware, then we just have we don't know and we can't give it any attention. So bringing awareness to it is one of the biggest pieces of it. And then we want to just be really loving and go really slowly and really gently and just exploring it. Like, where might this come from? When do you notice it showing up? And one of the models that I love is IFS, which I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's internal family systems therapy, and it talks about parts work because we all have different parts of ourselves, right? And so the process of healing trauma is going through and integrating all the parts, right? So we might have a part of ourselves that we might have lots of parts of ourselves that we love, that other people love, and maybe we're really easy to talk to, or maybe we're really good a good friend or really kind. But there's all of us have other parts that come up, especially when we're triggered, that bring us into survival patterns of like getting into a fight or flight pattern, for example. And so can we create a space within ourselves where all of that, every piece is met with love and with compassion, knowing that those parts are just younger, fragmented parts of us that actually didn't get what they needed. So if we go in and we condemn them and we make them wrong and we judge ourselves, that is only going to perpetuate it, right? And often it's the voice of a critical parent that we're hearing in our heads that like I wish I could remember what my client was saying yesterday, but he kept saying like, isn't that's so bad and that's so wrong? And I was like, whose voice is that? Like whose voice? Because this is not your voice. This isn't how you speak normally. He was like, oh, it's my dad. It's my dad. And I just want to say too that like a challenging part of this, I think, is that we have love for our parents and we're not here to make them bad or make them wrong or anything. We really need to recognize that they were operating on the curriculum of their generation, right? Which was very different than our generation. But a lot of the tools for parenting were like blame and shame and punishment. And we now know that those things really are not effective or supportive. And so we need to learn to become our own loving parent, right? And start to rewire some of these thinking patterns. And so that's just one aspect. And when I work with clients, it's really an intuitive approach for what that person is specifically needing. So I have a whole entire toolkit of modalities and things to support people. And it depends on whoever is in front of me and what they specifically need, what I'll give to them. But this one is universal. Like me bringing awareness, shining a light on it, bringing it to the light, then it's no longer in the background just wreaking havoc, right? But also then bringing so much love and compassion, knowing that this is a part of ourselves that we needed to survive in our environments that we were in. And it was serving us up to a time, and now it's not anymore. And that's okay. So recognizing, understanding that within ourselves, and then a beautiful addition to that is then we have compassion for others when we can notice them showing up like in a bit of a hysterical way. It's like, oh shoot, they must be triggered. Like something's up. Maybe they're 2 years old in this moment. Maybe they're 14 years old in this moment, right? But just bringing compassion. But we can only do that when we've first done it within ourselves.
I love that you said compassion is like huge because I think we can always make ourselves wrong for like, oh, I didn't do that relationship right or messed up or like I did this again and that showed up again and compassion is how we can start to reprogram and like you said, reparent ourselves and give our little child exactly what it needs. And then in terms of let's talking about like the wounds and the patterns, like how like sometimes people say they're ready to heal, but they're not ready. How do you know that you're ready to actually heal that childhood pattern because it could, bring up more trauma and but
Mhm.
people might not be ready yet.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And something that I learned from my mentors, their names are Ama and Santo Castro. I love to just give them a shout out because they changed my life. And they're experts in conscious partnership. But something that they taught me was that you really need to meet whoever is across from you exactly where they're at. So it's really a delicate process. We never want to go digging or pulling things up that aren't ready to come up, which is another reason why life is our teacher, right? So what we would work on is whatever is up for you specifically right now in your life because that's what's ready to be looked at. And it's an ongoing thing, right? Like I'm still working through some of this myself, and it depends on the level of trauma that you have and how it shows up because often we can actually re-traumatize ourselves as adults. So then we have like the childhood stuff to work through and then the adult trauma that we're recreating subconsciously because it feels familiar. So we'll pull in a similar energy as a partner or a similar energy as a boss or an employee or whatever to really shine a light. Like life is going to teach us, right? But the thing that becomes challenging is some people say, like, I really want to do this work. And I have the best clients. Like, I'm so grateful. But once in a while, that someone will come into my world and they say they want to do the work, but it's like, do you really? Because it's humbling. It's hard to look at. It's even now I'm still like, oh my God, I have that pattern. Like, oh, geez, so humbling. But the only way out is through, right? And that's how we become liberated from whatever is keeping us in chains. Like I always say, we have the keys to our own handcuffs. Like we have the keys to our own chains. No one else does. I don't have the keys to yours, but I can guide you to your own keys where you unlock your own chains, right? But the thing with us as humans is that we are wired to go towards pleasure and avoid pain. And so at this point in our evolution, most of us have to be in enough pain to then see, okay, what I'm doing really isn't supporting me. It really isn't working. So am I willing to try something different? And a lot of times it's like we're on our knees in that moment. It's like we have nowhere to go. We're completely surrendered. And actually, in those moments, that is a gift because what we're doing, our survival patterns, our programming isn't working anymore. And it's becoming louder and louder and louder. And life, being so generous, will keep turning up the volume and keep showing us, right? So part of my path personally has been like multiple rock bottom moments of like absolute like ache and heartache and grief and there was no other way to go, but because I've walked through that fire multiple times and walked through the darkness, I can now support others in doing that too because it doesn't scare me. Like I've been there. I'm very acquainted with the depths of hell and darkness, right? So but it is something where it's like we have to be humble enough to see that what we're doing isn't working and can we be open. And the other thing is whatever you're working through is also going to show up in the coach client relationship, and that's great. That's a good thing because it's a safe person who can actually help you walk through it. But there's a lot there can be projection and things like that. So if you're looking to do this work, I would suggest whoever you connect with, really tune into your heart and really ask your heart, like, is this a person who I feel could support me because our heads will do what our heads do. And this, oh, I don't know, yes, no, maybe, blah, blah, blah. All of our patterns will come up. And the second you're ready to make a change, the patterns are going to come up hardcore of like, no, it's not going to work. Whatever the story is, I can't trust this person, and your brain's going to want to keep you the same because it associates that with safety. So knowing that, dropping into your heart and really feeling into, okay, is this the next step for me? Right. And that's what I always say to people, like whenever you're deciding, and for myself too. And sometimes your head will still say, nope, definitely don't do it for whatever reason. A lot of people say, financial or whatever. But if you go to your heart and make a decision from there, you will not be led astray.
That's a good point because your heart does really know, your body knows if it's safe or not or to move forward with it. And it's so true. Like people might not be ready. They say that they're ready, but they're not. And they have to we don't want to re-traumatize them. And so understanding how like when you're ready is so important. I also think there's also the flip side where somebody goes too deep into healing and feels like it's like the not good enough until I heal all of me
Yeah.
syndrome, basically, and they go into that realm. So like what would your advice be to those types of people who are like trying to figure themselves out and trying to fix themselves and trying to heal themselves, but they're just kind of re-traumatizing themselves in the process?
So good. Your questions are so good. I love it. Yeah, that's a great question. So it's kind of why I mentioned like this is a lifelong journey. So we don't, in my opinion, reach this mountaintop where we're like, da da da, okay, like no more challenges. It's more like new level, new devil is what one of my mentors used to say, right? Like we've worked through this, and this. Oh, now there's a new experience in front of us that is an opportunity, right? But yeah, as far as like we can get addicted to healing and think like, oh, this person outside of me must have the answer, or I need to do another course, or I need to listen to more podcasts, or I need to, you know, do like this modality or that modality. And so just noticing, because how we do one thing is how we do everything, right? So just really noticing, like, again, I love that you mentioned tuning in, like coming back to your body. Our bodies know. So we can overload ourselves on healing too, right? So we want to come back to really practicing tuning into our bodies and our hearts and like, how do I feel like in the presence of this person? Or how do I feel with this certain modality? And sometimes it might be uncomfortable, right? Like there are moments in my sessions with people where we walk through some things that are not comfortable, but it's like more of a detox process. So having a safe, loving, supportive space to be held in doing that actually allows it to alchemize and heal on a cellular level rather than not looking at it. And then it's going to keep popping up. It's going to pop up over here, over here, over here. So it's just, but understanding that, like, also you're perfect in this moment as you are, right? So people will say to me all the time, I need to fix this. Or, once I can heal, then I can date someone. And I'm like, let's just throw all that out because you're literally perfect in this moment, exactly as you are. There is nothing to fix. There is nothing that's broken. You're human. You're learning lessons. We all, I believe, have different curriculums for what we're here to learn. So if we can start to live by that way of looking at things, it becomes a lot more loving. And I don't believe that we have to, like I said before, like dig in and pull up things that aren't ready. But at the same time, life's going to keep showing us. So it's up to us. It's not up to us, the lessons that we learn. It's up to us how loud we need it to get before we're going to actually look at it.
I love what you shared there as well too. And it prompted another question. It's like we have to start trusting ourselves because some people might not even trust their bodies. Like, how do you get to that level of trust where you know what direction to go in your own internal guidance, and get to the level of understanding for yourself.
It's so beautiful. Your questions. I feel like this is one of the best interviews I've ever had. um, Yeah, so great question. So we are really trained in a society of like the mind, the mind, the mind, the mind, right? And massive disconnection from our bodies. And so, full disclosure, I'm working on this myself. There's been different things that have supported me on this path, but anything that can get you out of the mind and into the body can be really, really helpful. And again, different modalities work for different people, right? So some people love breath work. For me, that's really hard because I've had a hard time just breathing because I've been bracing like most of my life with like PTSD stuff. But something that helps me a lot is yoga. I love yoga. And I used to think that people that talked about yoga were so annoying. And now I'm like, I am obsessed with yoga. And it's so much bigger than just a form of exercise. Um, and it really is like it's analogous to life. Like sometimes you might have a beautiful practice, sometimes you might not. Every time is different. And just learning to have compassion for yourself as you learn something new. Yoga is beautiful, meditation, prayer, swimming in the ocean, like anything that can get you out of the mind and into the body, just to practice that is wonderful because our bodies know, they know. And asking your body, right? Like, okay, what do I need in this moment? Like practicing just tuning in. Do I need some water? Do I need a nap? Like if someone's calling you, checking it, do I actually have the space to talk right now? Right? And just really checking in. And the more you build that relationship, similarly to like the more you build your spiritual practice with whatever you believe is like your higher power, God, your higher self, the more you build it, the stronger that relationship gets, right? So that's just another relationship, is your relationship to your body, your relationship to your healing journey. So it's when I say relationship coach, I'm actually wondering if I need to change what my title is, because it's so much more than just, it's not just romantic, it's not just human relationships. It's like relationship to money, relationship to your health, relationship to your body, relationship to God, right? All of those things.
It's so true. It's like it's all a relationship game. We had somebody here last week was like talking about relationship with nature and that we are nature, we live in nature. I'm like, oh, like everything is a relationship. Like and it's so fascinating when you look at life that way and you relate to it so differently. I would love to go into like family dynamics because I think that also creates a lot of trauma and your thoughts about healing family dynamics. I personally went through a healing with my dad, and we worked out a lot of like trauma just in working with him. But some people don't have the luxury of going to their family members and being able to heal. So I would love to hear your take on how family dynamics plays a role in, how we create relationships and how do we start healing that with or without our member or our family involved.
Beautiful, beautiful question. Yeah. Yeah, that's something I'm very familiar with on a personal level as well as professional level. And something this quote literally saved me, not only with romantic relationships, but with my family. And it's that people can only meet you as deeply as they've met themselves. Like that's really the truth. And so one of the biggest lessons of my life personally is that I can't change anyone. I can't change my family. I can't make my family the way that I would like them to be, right? It's not possible. And the amount of grief that I've experienced because of that has been exponential. Um, but the thing is that this stuff, it gets passed down through family lines. So intergenerational trauma, it didn't start with our parents, right? And when we think back, we actually carry 7 generations of energy in ourselves from our families. And so 7 generations back, think of all the things that we know or don't know that our parents have gone through and their parents, and like trauma and war, and depending on what part of the world you're from, like different things that you've experienced that are literally in their cells, right? And so just really understanding that it's bigger than us. And I believe personally that our souls choose our families for the exact things that we're here to learn, right? So on a human plane, for me personally, it's been really challenging because I love my family so much and we are just so different. It is wild. And when I was a little kid, I was like, I know I'm adopted. Like I'm not from this family. Like, and like it's been on a human level, literally heartbreaking, like so much grief. And on a soul level, I can see why I would have chosen this specific set of experiences, these traumas, these things that have molded me into the person who I would like to be here, right? Like, I don't think I could do what I do in the world if I hadn't gone through the adversity that I've gone through. And also, another thing too that's been important for me is like notice knowing like what came from my family that was challenging, but also acknowledging the gifts that came from them, because it's never all one thing. It's never black or white. And everybody is doing the best they can in this moment with what they have. And a lot of people do not have the tools. A lot of our parents sure don't have the tools. Like most of us were not taught how to have healthy, loving relationships, how to navigate through conflict, how to repair after something comes up. And so it's a journey, right? And if you're lucky enough to have a family member or family members that are willing to do this work with you, what a beautiful gift. Bless them. And if you aren't, that's okay too. You don't need anybody else to show up in a certain way for you to heal. And I noticed in the chat, I know I'm not supposed to be monitoring the chat, but I did notice that somebody asked about 12-step programs. And that is something that has definitely been a part of my journey. And a lot of these tools, I mean, are super supportive in healing these things, because if we don't have a supportive family structure, we need to find it elsewhere, right? So whether it's through the Grateful Giraffe community or 12-step community or a church community, we need community. Like we cannot do this alone. So I just wanted to answer that question just briefly, but yeah, so those are some of my thoughts about that.
Yeah, it is so true that community is one of the most important things because we're not meant to be at this alone. And I guess it's kind of related to the question that Sarah's asking, 'cause she mentioned loneliness, but she wants to know, are there obvious triggers and signs of an unhealed person and when they may be ready to start the healing process? Some people do not really understand, quote unquote, when they're ready. For instance, we look at the last epidemic of loneliness and think some of these people are really just starting their healing journey, but they don't even realize it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that you brought up loneliness, because that is real, 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 real. And yeah, with other people, this again, really challenging, right? Because everyone has different paths. Some people are more ready than others. And that can be some of the most heartbreaking aspects of life, right? Where like, whether it's a friendship or a romantic partnership or family, like the way that I describe it is, you can kind of be on a similar energetic plane, and then if one person starts to grow and the other person kind of stays here, or maybe they're a little bit like slower than this person, if there's too big of a discrepancy energetically, vibrationally, it has to break. So this has happened with me with romantic relationships so many times, because I'm on this like growth, and I'm sure everyone here is on this like rapid growth trajectory, right? So it's like, oh, nope, 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 nope. And same with family and friends. And it can be really challenging because the grief associated with that is real. And I personally found like for me, I've struggled massively with loneliness in this human experience so much. And even recently, but it is something where the more that we can meet even that part of ourselves with just love without making it like it should be different or I need to fix it or do something differently, just meeting it with love. But also, again, like we need community, we need connection, and we need spaces to be able to speak openly about this stuff, which is why I love 12-step programs, because you can literally go and say all the things that people aren't really saying. It's like, hey, this is exactly how I feel. And for me and for a lot of us, that's medicine if we grew up in homes where it was things weren't spoken or it was unsaid or it was judged, right? So, but yeah, as far as like what was the specific question? Let me go look. Um,
I think she wants to know about the trigger signs of an unhealed person
I
and
don't
when
know.
they're ready to start the healing process.
So, I mean, I don't like to label things like that, like an unhealed person versus a healed person, because I think we're all works in progress. Um, but certain triggers that I see all the time, I'm like, if you want to see how people are being impacted, right? Just go out in the world for a day and just watch like people in traffic honking, being like crazy. I'm like, oh my gosh, the level of projection, right? Like what's going on internally will be projected outward, right? So coming back to, the topic of today is like how healing our relationship with ourselves can impact every single thing. If we can meet those places of our within ourselves with love, we're not going to go out in the world, or we're less likely, still might happen if we get triggered, but we're less likely to go out in the world and project it onto somebody else and then react to that projection, right? Like it can be really discombobulating where it's like, what just happened here? Like somebody's pain inside is now externalized onto you and then they're reacting to that projection, right? So those are signs of someone that probably would benefit from doing some work on themselves. And again, like it's their path. So you can really hurt yourself and someone else if you try to bring them into your paradigm, which so much compassion. This has been one of the biggest lessons of my life. I'm like, come on, come with me. This will be helpful for you. Doesn't work unless they want to change, right? Think of how challenging it is to change your own self. And then you really see that we really can't bring anybody with us unless they're wanting to come. But I'll tell you something is the more that you elevate, the more that people like that on that same frequency will find you. Like look at all of us here today, right? Everybody here today is on a similar frequency. Otherwise we wouldn't be here. And so there are moments sometimes of transition where it's like, oh my gosh, this person's fallen away, or there's a breakup or a friendship, and it can be again really lonely, but better always comes. That's the thing that's so wild. Like I didn't believe this. I went through something that I lost an entire community and it was massively traumatic. Like it was the most painful thing I've ever gone through in my life. And then I found even more loving, more beautiful community and friendships. And I was like, okay, I guess I trust, you know? Yeah, better always comes.
Yes, that's so powerful. And I love what Mahalani said too. Community is immunity. It is like this tribe that we're cultivating. And um it's just there's another aspect that I want to ask about is like the societal dynamics, because I
Mm.
think you mentioned that in the beginning, and I think it's really important to understand like what society puts in relationships so that we can understand what we're dealing with. Otherwise, we're also blinded by that. So, what are those society, I guess, projections or limitations that they put in relationships and even relationship with ourselves?
Oh my gosh, there's so many, but like in a nutshell, we are trained in a society that is not healthy. It's very sick. And so we need to look at these beliefs, these programs, and really tune in with ourselves. And is this even what I believe? Right. Like I remember I sat with myself a few years ago and I was like, why do I think I want to get married? Like, do I actually want to? Or has it just been so ingrained into my brain that like this is what's supposed to happen. And if it happens, then it means something about me. And if it doesn't happen, it means something about me. And same thing with children. Like, do I actually want children? Right. So there's these societal markers for whatever is success or failure, right? Which is like this weird cookie cutter blueprint that's like the same for everyone, which is strange in itself. It's like these check marks, right? Like maybe it's like go to school, get engaged, get married, have a child, have another child, or like buy a house, whatever these things are. And they're all, it's like these markers. And I've seen, for myself, like it's been really challenging because I'm like, why is my path different? Why have I not yet connected with like a person that I want to build my life with, for example? And like, is something really wrong with me because of that? Right. But it's not. Like, everyone has their own path. There's divine timing, divine orchestration to all of it. But it's funny because well, not funny, but I'll see people who literally go through and check, 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 and they're like, I need to do this by a certain age. I want to have kids by a certain age. I want to do this. I need to have this established before I get into a relationship. And it's like all of these things that we've been fed and we've been taught. And then it usually ends up being a bit of a mess because we're not tuning in and allowing the orchestration of things. And, even like in our media, right? Like, a lot of us were raised on like Disney movies or romantic comedies where literally the messaging is like someone's coming in to save you. There's a white knight coming in, and he's, as soon as he gets here, everything's going to be fine and all your problems are going to be solved. And so a lot of us have that programming of like, when I have this or when this happens, then I will finally feel whatever it is that I'm desiring to feel. So it's this outside in model, which is really harmful. And so a big part of the work that I support people in and what I work on myself is like the inside out model, where once we create this within ourselves, then the outer world will reflect it back. But if we're going out grasping out in the world, it will continue to elude us. But everything in society tells us, go get that thing. Once you get that thing, then you'll be okay, right? So it's a massive paradigm shift.
It's always like once Prince Charming comes, I can start my life. Like it's not like I can start my life and then Prince Charming was attracted to me. Like it's a whole another way of thinking of things. Um and yes, Inside Out, the new Disney movie. I love that movie, by the way. It's but I want to ask about like breaking cycles. I think that's also really important for us to understand. And we talked a little bit about family dynamics, but it takes a lot of courage to break cycles. And I would love for you to talk a little bit about that because, some people come from abusive cycles or they come from single mothers and they become a single mother or whatever the cycle is, or they attract the same type of relationship that their mothers or fathers do. Like, how do you start breaking that? Like, what? And I think it takes a lot of courage. So, what do people need to do in order to like, I guess, get ready for and to take on that task?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Does it ever take courage? It takes so much courage. It's literally spiritual warrior territory. Like, it's no joke. And as far as what people can do to get ready. So in my experience, it's like it's your soul's path. So you don't really have a choice. Sorry. It's like when when you would like to do it, like you could push it off a bit more and have some of the same experiences again and again if you like, which I've done. Like, full disclosure, I've been like la 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 for a lot of my life. I'm like, I'm just gonna, oh, now I have a new boyfriend. That should fix everything, right? It's like, but to me, it's like it's written on your blueprint, on your path. So, and it's not an easy thing. Like, there, like, speaking of family dynamics, there are different roles in the family, right? But a lot of us as cycle breakers are the black sheep of the family, and so it's quite a thing to experience. And that's definitely my role, is like not only are you breaking the cycles and walking through the fire and healing things for generations to come, because I mentioned 7 generations back, the healing that we do impacts 7 generations forward as well. So if you think what you're doing isn't having an impact, it is, right? Not only in your family, but in society as a whole and the collective energy. But being the cycle breaker and the black sheep, a lot of times we will be, judged, condemned, shamed for doing something differently and breaking the cycles of the family. And so it's a really tough one. Like one of my clients the other day, we did an Instagram live because he was like, I want to share all my, shifts and transformation. And I was like, amazing. So we went on and we did the live and his dad watched it. And his dad was like, and there was nothing spoken about like in terms of his family or anything that would be in my opinion upsetting, right? But his dad was like, you have to take that down immediately, you're making yourself look like you have emotional problems and like all of these things. And we were like, and there you go, and there you have it, right? There's the roots of what we're really healing. But they know not what they do, right? Basically, like they don't know what they don't know. And so bless them, pray for them. I pray for my family every single day. And I just pray for them to have all of the like love and connection and beauty in their lives. And I just pray for them. And some of my family members right now don't speak to me. So I am not a stranger to like estrangement along this path. And like, how ironic is that literally I do relationship coaching and part of my family, like it's just, but then the universe started bringing me clients who were dealing with that. And I was like, okay, I see, like this is part of my journey here. Um, so yeah, it's complex, but hopefully that shines a little bit of light on it.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I think it also makes people feel less alone because like they've gone through similar processes in terms of like having to ignore family members or not like take that in. And I think it just gives us permission to like do what's best for ourselves so that we can move forward and we can break that cycle when we're ready to. I would
Mm.
love for you to share, any kind of last words of wisdom or last words of advice for people that are embarking on this journey of healing themselves, and taking that leap forward.
Thank you. One thing I wanted to add into is like if you are the cycle breaker and you're dealing with that, one of the biggest actually gifts in it is knowing your own essence. So knowing that you have a beautiful heart, that you're a good person, that your intentions are good, like really withstanding, because talk about projection, there's a lot of projection that's going to come at you. So that withstanding the projection is a really big one. And if you can do that with people closest to you, you can do that in all of life, right? So that's a gift that comes. So every single challenge, there is an opportunity within the challenge. So that is one thing. And is yeah, and just anybody who's like open or willing to do this work, like you're amazing. You're so courageous. It's so beautiful. And I know a lot of people can be really discouraged because they've gone through so much. And this time on the planet, this time in particular, is where all of our stuff's coming up. All of it's coming up. It's coming up for purpose. It's coming up to be cleared. It's coming up to be healed. So you're right on time, and go easy and go gently, and know that you don't have to do it alone. So you can pray for support, you can set the intention to be held, you can ask for what you're needing, right? um, but it's definitely the path of a warrior, and it's definitely super courageous. But for me, my favorite people on the planet are the ones who have been through the most adversity and have actually, like, that's molded them into the people that are so beautiful, in my opinion. Like the best people to be around are the ones that have walked through so much. So if that's you, then you're, in my opinion, you're a really special soul, and you came here to do really big things and be, and part of that is walking through it your own self, because then you can reach back and hold the hand of someone else who's walking through it. And so a lot of times we have to go first as well. So yeah.
That's beautiful. And I love the reminder that we have to remember our own essence because it's so easy to forget, especially when so many people are projecting different things upon us. And that helps us know what we truly are and what we're not. And so we can sort through all of it. I mean, we can talk for like a couple more hours on this. I know we have a limited time. I'm like, I was always so fascinated and it always goes by so fast. And I just want to say thank you and really appreciate you for being on and doing this work because more people need to I don't want to say they need to heal themselves because we shouldn't use need, but it's what's the word? But it's a powerful path that you're leading people on to understand more of themselves so that they can show up in a different way and we can create, like you said, a better world and when we are able to relate to each other in a not trauma healed way, but in a or unhealed way, but in a healed way, and we can meet people where they're at. So we want to just thank you for being on and love for you to share like if anybody wants to get a hold of you how they can reach out and then we'll go ahead and close that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to come back and talk more if we want to do like a second edition, because I love this stuff too, and there's always so much to talk about. But yeah, thank you to everyone who came. I'm so grateful to be here with all of you. And if anybody wants to connect more or chat more, you can reach out to me on Instagram or on the WhatsApp. I would love to just hear, where you're at, how you're doing, how this all landed for you. And my Instagram is Coach Jess Hendrick. So if you want to connect there, we can. And yeah, just so grateful. This was so fun. I love doing this. So thank you, Minling, so much for
Thank you
organizing.
so much. Everybody loved your conversation. We'll definitely chat about like doing another one.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. Thank you everybody for coming on and being with us. And we'll see you on the next Fireside Chat. Bye everyone.